Carr.
I'm
And
Amy
I'm
Wood.
Debi Carr and Associates, and I have Amy Wood with Copper Penny Consulting with me today. And we felt like we needed to come on and do a live talk about some information that is going to be hitting President Biden's desk maybe later today. Or at the earliest tomorrow. It's buried deep inside of that new bill that just came out. What is the name of this bill, Amy?
The cyber incident law is part of the $1.5 trillion government funding bill.
Yes, that we're sending money to Ukraine and funding all different kinds of things. And one of the things that we are funding is the cyber bill. And we wanted to talk about this. So buried deep, it talks about now that when you have a ransomware attack, how it has to be handled.
That is within 72 hours of an incident, which is a very short amount of time when you're trying to wrap your head around it.
So as we're reading this, is that 72 hours? That's 72 hours from the time that you've discovered the incident, correct?
Correct.
And then if you pay the ransom, we have to report within 24 hours of paying the ransom.
Absolutely.
So, and it's very detailed as to what you can and cannot do. It's very, very limiting. It appears that these things have to be reported in that quick amount of time. And this is reported to the federal government. This is not even worrying about any of the states. This is strictly just, I'm assuming it's probably going to be either CISA. Mm-hmm. It is going to be CISA, and I wonder if they're going to cross over to HHS.
Undoubtedly. We've heard rumors for quite some time that this reporting will cross over to Health and Human Services, also probably to DOJ, and then directly to state attorney generals that have additional laws. So, for example, I'm in California. We have extra laws like this.
Right.
And it just becomes this long list of people that have to be notified. But the time frame is actually the most concerning part of this law because it's an extremely short time frame.
And there are other things that are also kind of concerning. I mean, you and I talk all the time about the fact that we've got to preserve that crime scene. Now it's going to be mandated. Now you have to preserve that crime scene because you've got to be able to report it. And they want to, golly, from what I'm reading here, a blow-by-blow description of what that crime scene looked like.
Yeah, and it's all the things we've been talking about. So it's not really new information or new requirements, but it just solidifies that various agencies, various regulations are now stating that you must preserve the evidence. So what this means for dentists, for healthcare practitioners, anyone that's covered by HIPAA or any other regulation, or generally any business, according to this law, is that your IT provider cannot just delete the information and restore a backup. That is absolutely considered illegal now, according to this law.
Yes, and it specifically targets, or doesn't target, but it requires MSPs to have an active role. And they're identifying exactly what an MSP is, and they are expecting entities to have qualified MSPs, not, I mean, you and I both know, we see a lot of my nephew can make the network talk, so we're good, right? This isn't saying that's no longer acceptable and no longer tolerable.
Right, they're specifically saying IT providers or managed service providers, that's what we mean by MSP, they have to provide certain things to your practice. Either you have to do it yourself, which let's be honest, you're not capable or qualified to do all of that. You're doing dentistry all day. But you outsource this to an IT provider and they need to provide a minimum standard. And I think that's it's forgotten a lot what those minimum standards are.
And yes. And the thing about it is we're seeing, because of the staff shortages, we are seeing such a increase in outsourcing for office duties. But this is a critical aspect of running a business that does need to have an IT partner. And I know you do the same thing. We just kind of shake our heads when we hear, oh, I do it. Or, so-and-so, my nephew does it because he can make the network talk. Yeah. So
I can't afford it. That's the other one. And to be honest, I understand offices may have never paid for this kind of engagement, but the world has changed. And, I like to use the phrase standard of care. Every healthcare practitioner understands that standard of care changes over time. It just happens to move at a much faster pace when we're talking about technology and definitely with security. This law is absolutely reflecting what the current threats are and the current standard of care is to combat that. And I can tell you from personal experience, it's so much cheaper to be proactive on this than it is to be reactive.
It absolutely is. And while we're being reactive, that's why we wanted to come on, because the time to really get things in place is now. We know that threat landscape is high. It's at the highest that it's probably been in years. We know that small hanging fruit businesses are the primary target of these attackers. We know that we've got gangs that have taken sides with different events that are happening in the world, and they are coming after different things. So now's the time to be proactive. And we still have the safe harbor law that has gone into play, that went into play in January of 21, that if you have all these things in place and this event happens to you and you can document that you've had a security management in place for 12 months, then it creates a safe harbor, because paying the ransom just got a lot more difficult and is really no longer an option. And it's actually been illegal to pay the ransom. What was it, back in 2019, 2018, yeah, where they said paying the ransom was aiding and abetting terrorists? Mm-hmm. So Homeland Security came out with that one. It wasn't enforced. But I think that in light of this law that President Biden is going to sign, as well as the executive order that he's put into place, I've lost track of days. It was either the beginning of this week or the end of last week. There's now an executive order in place requiring businesses to up their cybersecurity stance. And it's so critical. And it starts with you need to have a good IT partner. Absolutely. But no IT company can make you compliant, and because it's what you're doing in your practice, and it has to be practice specific, and it has to reflect what is happening in your practice, and training your team on your processes is critical.
And maybe reviewing those processes and making sure that they're current with the current landscape.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because a lot of times things have happened and they've been sitting on the shelf for a couple of days or weeks, months, years. No one's ever looked at them. So yeah, you're right. Now's a good time to pull down that security manual. But my concern and my fear is that most practices do not have a security manual. They barely have employee manuals or company practice manuals. To have a security manual that says how patient data, and not just patient data, there's also data that is proprietary just to the practice, that is also critical. I know that, several of the hacks that I had in 2021, and Amy, I know you had the same issue because we talk a lot, is we had patient data, we had the backup of the data, but we didn't have their financials. And so we had practices that were paying 15, 35,000 to get their QuickBooks back because they were trying to apply for PPP loans, or it was the end of the year. Yeah. It's so important, and we can't stress this enough. Amy, why don't you give your contact information, and then I'll give mine. And if you want to read this bill, it starts on page 2524, and it's about, what, 30 pages long of a large bill. I think it's, there's only 2,700 pages of the bill, so it's towards the back.
That's a short one.
Yeah, it's just a short,
short one.
Just a short little paragraph in there. No, it's about 20, 30 pages, but it is very specific. But if you want to say how people can contact you.
Sure. Yeah, my website is copperpennyconsulting.com, and email is education@copperpennyconsulting.com, or HIPAA. You can spell it either way. I'd prefer you spell it correctly, but HIPAA@copperpennyconsulting.com as well. And really the main thing I want to end with is that this is changing. I mean, this law is new, so there will be some change with CISA and how they ultimately enforce it. But at the same time, it's what we've been saying for years and years. This is just a culmination of the government finally saying, all right, this is enough. This is a really high time for threats, and businesses need to be very on top of things. So the old way of doing things just isn't going to cut it anymore. So both of us have tons of experience in this. We know how to talk to you about it and how to make recommendations so that you guys are safe and protected.
You're so right. It is not going to get any easier. It's not going to get any better. It's going to continue to be. We know that medical records on the, and we don't even have to talk about the dark web anymore, on the web. We know that medical records are a high value.
Well, mine are there.
Yes, yours are there. What are you valued at right now? 300 something?
Top dollar, I'm worth $385 for my name, birth date, social security number, and Kaiser medical record number. And those were from
the thing that we have to remember is that, especially in the dental practice, that that we are collecting a whole patient, a whole purpose. But both Amy and I work with healthcare providers, and this problem is not just dental. This problem is across healthcare. And the reality is this problem is across every industry that we have in the United States right now. Every small business is being required to take these precautions. And this will be, it doesn't specifically say healthcare, it says any business, any entity doing business in the United States, which again is your small practices. To reach me, I'm at Debi, D-E-B-I, at dkcarr.com, and my phone number is 844-DK-CARR1. Website is www.dkcarr.com. Thanks for jumping on with us. Thank you, Amy, and stay safe and start working on your security program.